Joining us now, Washington, D.C., the chairman of the American Conservative Union, Matt Schlapp. Always good to have him on. He's also the guru of the CPAC, Conservative Political Action Conference. Matt, good to have you with us, man. It's been too long.
John, way too long. Lots has happened.
I know. Since we talked, we saw each other in the lobby along Radio Row in CPAC, and I was defending you that day because, I don't know, somebody had written an article saying bad things about you. I forget who it was or what it was. I just remember
There's so
reading
many,
it.
it's hard to keep track of them.
I know. I remember defending you on the air because it was such crap, and I was there. So it's like I'm there right in the middle of it. It's all lies. But that's what these online, some of these companies do. They don't have anything else to do. Matt, let's get to the convention in Cleveland. Now, Matt, I'm going to be on Radio Row, as always, but even better than that, I'm running for national delegate along with my Trump team, my wife Ann, and Councilman Robert Ike in the 4th District in Wakefield on May 21st. So hopefully I'll win that. So I might be on the floor with you in Cleveland. Now, what do you think of that? You're going to be fired up, right?
Yeah, for sure. First, you got to win your election.
I know.
Those are big elections
I
this year.
got to win my election. I know. We're working on it. We feel really good about ours. We organized early. We got the very early endorsement of the Donald Trump for President team and Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump. So we have a unified team, and we pre-filed a lot of delegates. But like anything else, you still got to go out and win the race, and you have to get your people out, and hopefully we're going to be able to do that. A lot of shenanigans going on now. Ken Cuccinelli running around trying to get delegates for Ted Cruz in the back door. Yesterday they sent a fundraising email out saying that Trump delegates are threatening Cruz delegates, send them money. What the hell's going on?
You know, I think what's going on is that we haven't had a close election like this in 40 years. And what happens in those situations is you see all the cracks in the process. It's not a very perfect process. Democracy is actually a lot less perfect than people realize. Remember the Florida recount. There's subjectivity, there's infighting, there's angling, there's the backdoor way in, and it happens. And usually it doesn't matter because the cushion by which somebody wins the Republican nomination is large enough. And what we're witnessing is an incredibly contentious and close, at least when it comes to the delegates, a close contest. And it's going to fray a lot of nerves, and we're going to see if the party can survive it.
Well, I tell you what's interesting with the Trump and the Cruz backers. They're very different. And let me tell you why. The Cruz people are attacking us almost on a daily basis for a variety of reasons. We never attack them. So I've never really seen this. I've been in these fights, Reagan, Ford. I was for every loser that ever hit the pike going back to, going back to 72, Matt. 72, I was for McCloskey, lost that. 76, Reagan, lost that. 88, Kemp, lost that. 92, Pat Buchanan, lost that. 96, Pat Buchanan, lost that. 2000, Steve Forbes, lost that. 2008, Fred Thompson, lost that. So 2012, Newt Gingrich lost that. Now I finally got a winner, right? Trump. I'm 0 for 20. How's that even possible? I know.
That's terrible.
All I do is back losers.
Stay on the radio, John. I don't know about this.
All I do is back losers. I'm like the kiss of death.
What you are is your principles, and you stand for what you believe, whether it has a chance of success or not. And I have a lot of respect for that. And I think what's happening this cycle is it is unlike anything we've seen in a very long time, and I think it is pretty open. Donald Trump has received a lot more votes across the country, has a lot more victories, but the delegate matchup is what it is. I think it's fair that he get to 50% plus one in the delegate count. I think our nominee needs to be able to get there because that nominee has to be able to unite the party.
Yeah.
And, John, what I worry the most about is that if Ted Cruz pulls this off, do people like you put your arm around him and say, I'm with you, Ted? And if Donald Trump pulls this off, do all of these people in the Cruz camp and the Jeb Bush camp and the John Kasich camp, do they put their arm around Donald Trump and say, we're with you? And I think that's the big question we don't know the answer to.
We don't, and a lot is going to depend on if this goes to an open convention, is how the battle goes, whether people think it's fair or not. Look, I was there in 76. It took 2 weeks. I mean, I'm going to tell you, it wasn't like I'm going to go out the next day and ring doorbells for Gerald Ford. I mean, we knew what went on there. We knew the delegates cajoling, I don't know what you want to call it, buying, bribing. We knew
Well, they
about,
could offer jobs. Remember, when you're an incumbent, they just offered jobs in the administration.
We saw it all. And I was a very young man then, Matt, but it took 2 weeks. But then, you licked your wounds, you got home, I remember, staying in bed for 2 days. I was so upset. But, you finally get up and then you look at the world and you said, okay, well, the alternative is Jimmy Carter. Pick one. And so, we all backed Gerald Ford. I'm hoping that would happen. I know from my standpoint, there's probably not a bigger Trump backer out there, but if Ted Cruz is the nominee, I'll certainly get behind him because the alternative is worse.
Well, that's where my head is, and I haven't endorsed in this race. Obviously, I voted in Virginia. My wife and I voted in Virginia, but I haven't publicly endorsed because I do worry about what happens the day after Cleveland. Mm-hmm. And I worry about it substantially because more important than my preference for the Republican nominee is beating back this idea that Hillary Clinton is acceptable in any scenario. And I want to be able to work with thousands of other activists and leaders around the country to try to pull us back together. Because in the end, we're a coalition. We're a coalition of people that don't always agree with everybody. One of the things we work on every day at the American Conservative Union is pulling together social conservatives with, more libertarian-minded people and people that care about national security foremost, and pulling this all together in a kind of a patchwork, a coalition, because we know that anybody we would pick from that coalition is so much better than anybody we would pick from the left. And our country is facing this real problem where huge swaths of our society even are okay with the idea of being a socialist.
Well, yes. You look at the alternatives out there, they're not good. But it was interesting. I was in New York City last week, Sunday, I guess Saturday.
Now, why would you do that?
Wednesday. Well, I was covering the New York primary.
Okay,
and
fair enough.
So I was there and I got to broadcast Tuesday night from Trump Tower. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. Big fun, big win. But I talked to, on the radio, Matt, a lot of Bernie Sanders people. And I got to tell you, 50% of them were telling me that if their candidate didn't make it, that they were not going to vote for Hillary. Of the 50% that said they weren't going to vote for Hillary, 2/3 of them said they would vote for Trump if he was a nominee. So I don't know how it is on the other side. But I would think that if it's a fair process, people are going to come together at the end. There's a lot of shenanigans going on now. One thing I want to get your take on today, Matt Schlapp, is I think right now Trump is going to get over 1237 because I think he's going to have a big night tonight. I think he's going to win Indiana. He's way ahead in the Golden State. He's way ahead in New Jersey. So I think he gets to 1245. But here's the question, okay? The overwhelming majority of those delegates are bound, but some actually do vote individually depending on the state and how it's set up. So is it possible that if Trump is at 1245, that 10 delegates who ostensibly are pledged can say, nope, I'm not going to vote for him, and he comes up short on the first ballot, even though they're pledged ostensibly? Is that possible?
Yeah, so what's the number they have to get to? 1, 2, 3, 7.
Yes.
And look, some of these, the majority on the first vote, the majority of these delegates are bound. But the only thing I introduced to you, John, is what does bound mean? They're told it's different in every state, but most states say to the delegates, look, our internal rules are that you will vote this way. Well, people break rules all the time. So, bound is a good thing for a candidate, but it's not like in every case it is a contract written in blood. Now, most of these delegates who are bound will vote that way because, it takes a long, as you just outlined in the beginning of this interview, it takes a long process to become a delegate. You have to work within the party structure to get to be a delegate. You don't exactly want to be seen as somebody who will break your word by breaking something like a promise to vote for the candidate who won your primary in your state or your caucus. So I think most of those are bound. But once again, just think about all of us in our lives. There's all kinds of laws and rules we face every day, including the speed limit and everything else, and, that we don't follow everything. And in politics, these delegates and political people follow laws sometimes even less than the general public. So what Donald Trump has to realize is that, yes, he has to get to this number of bound delegates on that first vote to guarantee that this thing is done. But there's a certain amount of courting that has to be done even to those delegates. He has to be seen as acceptable. He has to be seen as somebody they want to work with, or at least they don't want to cross. And that's why I say, Donald Trump is facing two campaigns at the same time. He's got to continue to win these states to get to the minimum number of delegates he needs. But at the same time, he does have to work his magic within Republican circles, within these delegates, the state chairman, the national committee people, the people on the national committee, the 168 people on the national committee. He has to work with them, too, so that they don't get spooked. And I think there's been several moments in this campaign. He's so good at taking on those in power that sometimes those in power get spooked. And he's got to be careful not to spook them either. He has to be seen as a partner with them going forward if he wants to be the nominee of the party.
Matt, that makes a lot of sense. Matt Schlapp, let's get to what you just said. Donald Trump hiring a bunch of insiders, Paul Manafort, Rick Gates, Rick Wiley. Now he just hired Ken McKay from the Christie campaign. I mean, these are inside baseball, RNC, longtime operatives, many of them lobbyists, many of them the exact people that Trump has railed against. But now he's brought all of them in to run this phase of his campaign from his inner circle. Now, obviously, that's causing some hand-wringing because they're the opposite from the outside what Trump really stands for and he's trying to do, which is break up the cabal. But now he brings them in. You think that was a good move?
Well, I mean, he's trying to break up the cabal, and I think most of what he's trying to focus on is the way the public policy process works in Washington. And let's face it, for Republican leaders and Democratic leaders in Congress, I mean, he is a bit of a threat, a definite threat to the old way of doing business.
Right.
But I do think there's a basic professionalism he brings to his businesses, and I've talked to a lot of people who have done business with him, and not everybody's been happy about doing business with him. In fairness, he's a pretty tough guy, but a lot of people believe that he's a man of great talent who runs his buildings very well, who has a great eye for building things, and guess what? He brings in top-notch people to run his businesses, and I think he shouldn't do any less when it comes to his campaign. He ought to have top people, and I don't think it's that he hasn't had top people. Matter of fact, I would consider myself friends with most of the people running his campaign up to now, and I think they've done. I mean, my hat is off to them. They have done more with less staff and less budget than I think anybody in the history of presidential politics. I think they've done a great job, but I think it makes sense to be well staffed as the campaign changes. And one of the things that's changing is they got to win in Cleveland. So, Rick Wiley's a friend of mine. A lot of people criticize him for what he did with Walker. He's actually not really an insider. If you saw one photo of him, you kind of get the joke of Rick Wiley. He is his own guy. He's a total individual. He's kind of a surfer dude. Kind of hates Washington. He lives in Austin, Texas. So I think he's more along the lines of the type of person you're talking about. Paul Manafort, I don't know him. He's an insider, but he's an insider from 40 years ago. So maybe you just have hard feelings over that Ford Reagan thing. I don't know. But,
yeah, that still bothers me.
I don't blame you. By the way, that's a blemish.
You're very. I tell you what, you're very insightful, Matt. I don't know how long ago was that. 1976. I never really recovered from that. In fact, all my problems you could probably trace back to Kansas City, right? I never have recovered from that.
Well, I was. I'm not gonna. I guess I was 9 years old when that happened. But all I will tell you is that even I, as a little kid, was told of the lessons for the Republican Party of picking the wrong guy, and of course Gerald Ford went on to lose, and we remember that John McCain went on to lose, and Mitt Romney went on to lose, and
Bob Dole.
So a lot of those people that you didn't support went on to lose. Bob Dole went on to lose. So
they all lost.
Doesn't mean they're not good men. It just means that. Aren't we all sick and tired of hearing, you can't be for that guy because he can't win in a general, when a lot of these guys they say can win in a general don't end up winning?
Well, look, exactly. Like I rattled off every Republican I was for since 1972, and the only two that I backed early that won, so I guess I'm 2 for 20 or whatever the math is Reagan in 80, and obviously in 84 there was no race, so it's really 1. 1 for 20, which was Reagan in 1980. Every other candidate I've backed in the primary, I went down the tubes in smoke. So I'm trying to get a winner here with Trump.
Well, John, the thing is this, which is they tell us Trump can't win, and they tell us Cruz can't win. And I know a lot of people are in this Never Trump movement, which I think is a disgrace.
Yes, it is.
But let's be honest, most of those people in the Never Trump movement are also quietly in the Never Cruz movement. They think that both of these people, although they're very different candidates, represent this outsider voice, which is irresponsible, and they don't want to have anything to do with. And I think I'm really kind of happy, that they've run out of options unless they want to go with John Kasich, who won his home state, which I guess we should kind of give him some tiny little bit of credit for.
Matt, that's hashtag Governor one for 41. Right. Matt Schlapp, right. Chairman, American Conservative Union, and head honcho at the Conservative Political Action Conference. Matt, it's been too long. I got to get you back on more regularly. We always have a good time.
I'll come on anytime you ask, John.
And you always push all my buttons. You get me back to 76. And I don't like Paul Manafort because he screwed us out of that election in 76, making all those deals with Clark Reed in Mississippi. Now you're bringing all this up now again.
I met Clark
You're like
Reed
my psychologist.
at the White House.
You did?
When I was working for President Bush, and wow, let me tell you, those animosities from 1976, they go to the grave.
They really do, because he promised that he would vote for Reagan and take his entire Mississippi delegation with him. And there were 38 of them. And without that 38, they had no chance to win. They had counted on. He got stabbed in the back. Paul Manafort was right in the middle of it. All right, man, I'm out of time. I want to thank Matt Schlapp for being with us.